He left me to rot in intensive care. A few days later, he fell to his knees, begging for his inheritance. I tore up the paper and spat the pieces in his face. I lay in the hospital room. The monitors didn't argue. They continued their thin, honest beep while the nurse adjusted the IV and asked, "Can I call someone?" I said my son's name. She dialed the number twice. Voicemail. His cheerful voice, recorded on tape, promised to come back. I lay there, tasting bitterness and resentment. What kind of son would turn his phone face down while his mother fought for her life? 2 days later, he came in, freshly cut and worried. "Mom," Daniel said, hurrying. "You scared me." He touched my forearm with 2 fingers, careful not to smudge anything. "I'm coordinating everything. Insurance, the house, the medications. We need to sign some paperwork so I can help." He placed the tablet on the fold-out table. His name was already typed next to a durable power of attorney, a transfer on death, and a change of beneficiary. "Just in case," he said, "if you were to die." "Die?" My voice came back stronger than I thought. He smiled as if the words were a joke. "Mom, please, don't make this harder. The social worker said it was best to arrange everything, and I paid your bills while you were here." "Paid?" I asked. "With whose money?" He cleared his throat. "We're family. Family. The word people use when they want to take title to their property without a mortgage." He handed me a pen. "Just sign where I marked." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, like it, and let us know in the comments what time it is where you're listening to this story. "I'm not signing until I read everything in detail," I said. He looked at his watch. "Mom, I'll lose the interest rate lock on your refinance if we don't move today." That's the rush that always comes from a buyer, not a loved one. He pulled the top page closer, a little closer than necessary, like a dealer who thinks you're already hooked. Then I realized my son was a man to be ashamed of. I snatched the papers from his hands and tore them down the middle. Then again, until they looked like confetti at a party. I spat the pieces into my palm and pressed them into his. "I'm not going to die," I said. "I'm recovering." The room seemed larger, the beeping grew louder. He stood there with the paper stuck to his fingers. I looked past him, out the window, and quietly promised, "You wanted control, I want the truth. We'll see which of us is better at what we want." Sometime later, I returned home, the bandage still tugging at my skin, and the discharge bracelet digging into my wrist. The nurse insisted that someone walk me to the sidewalk. I lied, saying my son was waiting. He wasn't. The air was damp and cold, the kind that slips under your coat and takes its time. I knew my revenge was near. Tomorrow, I'll make him pay. For everything. A white envelope lay on the rug, final notice in red, the safe combination, written in an unfamiliar curly handwriting beneath my name. I turned the key. It didn't work. The house smelled faintly of orange peel and someone else's cologne. My kitchen table was cleared of its usual pile, a crossword puzzle, a hardback church bulletin, a coupon I was about to cut out. In their place lay a neat manila folder and a lone orchid in a pot, a flower so delicate it felt embarrassing to be part of this scene, a yellow sticky note on the folder. "Sign when ready." D. I did not touch it. Instead, I opened the flower tin. The little phone lay against the metal, with its blind camera facing the room just as I'd left it. The last recording had captured his voice in the hospital when he thought a curtain made him private. Now it would capture whatever he did when the curtains were mine. I made tea I didn't want and called Linda from the landline because I didn't trust my cell. "He's been here," I said. "Don't open that folder," she said. "I'll be there in 20. Come to the back door." She was there in 10 because friendship is the only thing that speeds with age. She shut the door gently, as if not to wake something. Linda smells like Dove soap and winter coats. The hug she gives always lands exactly where the ache is hiding. She didn't ask if I was sure. She looked like nurses do, with trained eyes. "There," she said, pointing to the baseboard. "New scuff?" He dragged something heavy. I followed the mark into the hallway. A suitcase waited open on my bed, my shirts folded too carefully, the way you fold when you've never done it for a life. I counted the holes where my picture frames used to hang. "He's staging," Linda said softly. "If someone comes later, it looks like you're moving to assisted living by choice." "I'm not moving," I said. I was barely moving, and I'm still not moving. Back in the kitchen, I washed my cup and ran the tap hot so the sound would hide my voice from any device I hadn't found. "He's not clumsy about this. He knows I'm careful." "You're more careful," she said. "What's your next step?" I looked at the orchid. It wasn't mine. Hospitality as a threat. I lifted it and found nothing underneath, then pressed the sticky note flat with 2 fingers, feeling for thickness. Nothing. The folder was heavier than paper, though. I cracked it open just enough to see the words listing agreement and exclusive right to sell. My son had always loved exclusive things. "Bank first," I said, "before he can claim I'm incompetent and freeze me out." Then a visit to the title office, and I want the pharmacy printout for the last month. Why the pharmacy? Because someone refilled a narcotic I didn't take, and I want to know who signed. If he was willing to leave me in a hospital bed to strengthen his story, he might be willing to sweeten it with a medication error. Linda nodded once and dug in her tote. She pulled out a small spiral notebook. "We'll write names, times, exact words." "Not feelings come later," I said. "After the truth." At the bank, I wore my good coat and my church shoes and the bracelet I used to save for weddings. I looked like a woman who remembered her account number without a purse. The branch manager, a woman with kind eyes behind practical glasses, met me at her desk. "Mrs. Hale," she said, "I'm glad you came in. We have some unusual activity we wanted to confirm. The relief that rose in me made me dizzy for the first time." "Show me." She spread the statements. Transfers labeled HELP. Online password resets at hours even owls avoid. An autopay added to a property management company I had never hired. "Whoever attempted this knows how the system looks," she said. "They left things near enough to normal that a distracted person would miss them." "I wasn't distracted," I said, and then softened. "But I was ill." She folded her hands. "There's also this." She turned a paper that looked like a polite command. "A proposed durable power of attorney sent to us by a law office that does a lot of real estate work. They were asking how to link it on file when signed." "Proposed," I repeated, "not executed. No notarization. No doctor's letter. No court order. Just eager email." I pictured my son at a keyboard, selling urgency like a product. I looked the manager in the eye. "Can you put a note on my account? No changes without my in-person approval. No phone authorizations. No exceptions." "I can put a hard flag," she said. "We'll require you physically here. And a security phrase only you know." "Good," I said. "Make the phrase the name of my 7th grade librarian." She smiled. "He won't guess that." "He never returned books on time," I said. "Only people who finish what they start remember librarians' names." We sat in the quiet hum of the branch while she typed. "One more thing," I said. "If anyone tries to wire out to a new recipient, call me and call Linda and call the police if I don't answer." The manager nodded. "We'll do it by the book." "By the book?" I echoed, thinking of the cookbook sheltering my other record. "Paper protects the vulnerable if you choose the right paper." At the title office, we asked if any deeds had been recorded recently with my name. The clerk checked and shook his head. "But there's a pre-clearance request pending," he said. "Name on the request, Daniel Hale." My mouth went dry. "What does pre-clearance mean in English?" "He sent a copy of a form to ask if it would fly before he got signatures," the clerk said. "It won't. He forgot the 2-witness requirement on one page. We told him to bring it back correct. He said he would. He always does. He does what he sets out to do, unless a person like me stands in the doorway and makes a human shape out of the word no." We visited the pharmacy next. The tech recognized me. I bring them cookies in December. "Mrs. Hale," she said, lowering her voice. "I'm glad you're here. Someone tried to pick up your oxycodone last week. Someone, a man, she said he was your caregiver. I wouldn't release it because the DOB he gave was off by a day. He got snippy, asked if I knew what a liability lawsuit was. Did he give a name? He said Daniel. He kept scratching his neck. My son has never had allergies. Did he leave anything? I asked, aware of how much I sounded like a woman in a detective show. The tech reached under the counter and pulled out a business card he'd used to scribble a phone number. He'd left it when he scolded someone over speakerphone, pacing, forgetting the small important things because he was too busy trying to win a big ugly one. I put the card in my pocket, a contractor's logo, a number that, when I later called from Linda's phone, shed a voice I knew by the way he said hello like a sigh. My son's investor. The man who, last Thanksgiving, clapped Daniel on the back with fingers that felt like appointment reminders, do. That night, I slept in my chair with the light on, because sometimes rest is less about darkness and more about evidence. At 1 a.m, the house alarm chirped the way it does when a battery dies. At 2, the motion detect camera on the porch, bought by the nephew discount I don't actually have, sent my phone a silent alert. A tall figure bent near the lock, then straightened and checked the street. He used a key. I didn't set a trap that night. I learned his rhythm instead. In the morning, I called the social worker whose voicemail had chirped at me from the ICU. She answered on the second ring. Mrs. Hale, she said, professional concern, rounding my name. How are you feeling? Capable, I said. And I need you to hear something. I put the phone on speaker and played the recording from the hospital, the one where my son's voice changed register when he thought I wasn't listening. The part where he said, "We need to move now before she leaves AMA again," as if leaving a hospital bed for my own kitchen chair were a crime. The social worker exhaled. May I visit today? Yes, I said. Come at 3. Bring whoever you bring when a family says one thing and a mother says another. She came with an investigator from Adult Protective Services who wore his tie like a shield. I told my story once and only once, not the pity version. The paper version, the dates, the numbers, the sticky notes, the pharmacy, the not quite legal eagerness at the bank, and the title office. I watched them write and watched them not write, and I used different words when their eyes drifted because you can lose a story in a yawn if you're not careful. Do you fear your son? The investigator asked at the end. I thought of fear the way you think of handrails, useful when you need them. I fear what he thinks love allows. Do you want a protective order? I want a visit, scheduled at a time he thinks is his idea, I said. And I want you to hear him say what he says when he doesn't think anyone official is listening. The investigator's pen paused. That can be arranged. Good, I said, because I've been arranging my part. The arrangement was simple because simple is harder to wriggle out of. I called Daniel and told him I understood, that being alone had made me stubborn, that I would sign, but only if we did it at home, no office, because hospitals made me queasy now. I said the word queasy with a little tremble I did not feel. He was at my door in 30 minutes with a notary whose commission stamp looked like it had notarized more boat sales than family agreements. Mom, he said, too bright, let's make this painless. Painless, I repeated, pouring coffee. No rush. He handed me a pen with blue flags like the ones I shredded. Just the signatures we need. We sat. He talked about paperwork burdens. He used the phrase moving pieces 3 times. He did not see the small camera in the lace of the curtain, and he did not see the way the microphone in the sugar bowl glowed faint, the color of secrets. He did not see the investigator's car across the street, pretending to be neighborly. Before we start, I said, tell me what this does. In simple words, it lets me help you, he said. What help? Pay your bills, manage the house, handle insurance, sell my house, if needed. Without asking me? Mom, don't. Without asking me? I repeated, because a sentence asked twice is a mirror and people hate to look at themselves. He shifted. In a true emergency. What qualifies as one? If you get confused? If you leave the stove on? If you wander, you think I wander? I think you've been tired. I looked at his face, the dimple left by my husband's DNA. Tell me the truth, I said. Is someone asking you to hurry? He did the thing he does when he's cornered, pushes air out his nose, looks at a wall, smiles without joy. Everyone has timelines. Everyone, I said softly, does not have my house. He held out the pen again. Mom? I put the pen down. I'll sign a limited document, I said. Bank only, for deposits. We'll add Linda as a co-signer to watch you. Nothing on the house changes. The rest we can discuss with my lawyer. He didn't move. My boy has never liked the word limited unless it was attached to addition and sold out in an hour. Why are you making this adversarial? I'm making it maternal, I said. I'm raising you, again, because you seem to have forgotten. He sighed. Then we can't do anything. Not today, I said. But we will do something. He gathered his papers with a tightness that hurt to watch. At the door, he turned. You're going to regret making this difficult. Maybe, I said, but I've regretted easier things. After he left, the investigator stepped out of the car and knocked. We heard enough, he said. We'll start a file. It gives us leverage if he tries anything. Leverage is nice, I said. Truth is nicer. 2 days passed without a word. Then the second opening in this story arrived not with a knock, but with a crash. The sound of my front window cracking as a baseball hit and fell to the rug, rocking to a stop like a heart. A paper band wrapped around the ball read in block letters, "Call me now." I did not call. I called Linda, who called the police, who called it vandalism. The officer's eyes were tired. Neighbors see anything? He asked. They saw a man who thinks he's still a boy, I said. That evening, a woman I barely knew knocked with a pie and the news. I'm Melissa, she said. We met at the neighborhood yard sale. I think we need to talk about your son. People always want to divide the world into heroes and villains. It's easier that way. But Melissa was neither. She was the woman Daniel had been seeing off and on while telling me he was too busy for dinner. She wore a sweater with a snag near the cuff and the kind of makeup you put on to cover a bruise after it fades. She stood at my sink and cried into the paper towel that I usually save because waste feels like a moral failure. He said it was temporary, she said. He said investors were pressuring him and that once he freed up liquidity, he'd be different. How different? Gentler, she whispered. More himself. People don't change into themselves under pressure, I said. They show you who they are there. She told me about the lies. The money moved between accounts like small animals looking for warmth. The night he borrowed her car and returned it smelling like paint thinner. The way he flinched when his phone rang with a certain ringtone. The investor's number, the man who claps. He said you were slipping, she added, shame spilling out on the floor with the rest. He said you needed help and you refused it. I refuse theft, I said. Help I accept. We drank the tea I finally wanted. The room settled around us the way rooms do when a new witness sits down. I didn't know yet whether Melissa would be the kind of witness who stays, but even brief truth is useful. Will you tell someone what you told me? I asked. If I have to, she said. I'm scared of him. Me too, I said, and felt the solidness of saying it. But I'm more tired of being quiet than I am scared. The next morning, the bank manager called. We declined a wire, she said. He tried to move $10,000 with a phone authorization. When we told him no, he raised his voice. We've documented it. Good, I said. If he tries again, call the investigator, not me. He said he had power of attorney. He does not, I said. He has a mother. I made another call to a lawyer whose card had lived in my wallet for 10 years like a superstition. He sees women like me twice a week, women who are called stubborn for not signing away their breath. He listened and nodded and did not smile when I made a joke to make it easier. We'll file a simple petition, he said. We don't need to accuse, we need to assert. You have capacity. We get it in writing from your doctor. We flag the county clerk. We put a statement in the file that any deed related to your property requires your physical presence, and my office informed, that sounds like a lot of paper, I said. It's less paper than it will be if we wait, he said. And less paper for you to carry because I'll carry it. There are men who believe a woman's thank you is a down payment on something else. My lawyer did not. I hired him on the spot. He suggested a meeting. Not confrontational, he said. Constructive. You tell your son what you will do and what you will not. We do it in my conference room with the recorder on. If he behaves, we move forward. If he does not, we have a record. 3 days later, Daniel walked into the conference room already annoyed. He didn't sit. He looked at the recorder like it had insulted him. My lawyer, Mr. Ortiz, explained the limited authority I was willing to sign, bank deposits, medical updates permission, nothing on real estate, no beneficiary changes. Protective but respectful, he said. Daniel laughed. This is a joke. No, Mr. Ortiz said mildly. This is a boundary. My son leaned toward me. Mom, he's making you paranoid. Paranoid is what people call careful when they want you careless, I said. You can't live alone forever, he said. I can live not imprisoned now, I said, and I can live with myself later. He paced. He put a hand on the glass wall and left a print that looked like the map of a city he wanted to own. Then he turned, and in that turn, the truth fell out of him like a pocketed coin slipping through a hole. Do you know what happens to me if you don't sign? He said, and then he said, numbers, debt numbers, timeline numbers, lawsuit numbers, names of men with different first names but the same last name. Partner, I watched Mr. Ortiz watch him. I watched a man who sells calm for a living decide which drawer to open next. You just told your mother you want to sign away her house to pay your debts, he said evenly. Do you want to try that again for the recording? Daniel straightened. I didn't say that. You did, I said quietly. And you said it like I wouldn't notice. The meeting dissolved the way a bad cake does, crumbling at the edges, losing shape. He left with his jaw tight, and I left with a copy of the recording and the kind of sadness that makes your coat feel heavier than it is. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the orchid I should have thrown away. I touched the solitary bloom with one finger and thought of how orchids thrive on neglect. They want less than you think. People like my son want more. I said his name into the empty room. The recorder caught that too. The empty house is a truer witness than a room full of advice. He didn't stop. He adjusted his strategy. He went to my neighbor and cried about how hard it was to care for a stubborn mother, and he borrowed their ladder to fix a leak on mom's roof. He called my doctor's office and tried to schedule a cognitive test for my safety. He left me a voicemail saying he'd always taken care of me and that it was time to return the favor. The word favor made me angry in a way I recognized as healthy. Anger gets a bad reputation because it looks ugly when men hold it. When women hold it and aim it properly, it becomes a tool. I aimed it. I told APS about the pharmacy. They subpoenaed the video from the day he tried to pick up a prescription in my name. I told the bank about his investor's number. They flagged it. I told the title office my son had pre-cleared a deed. They added a bright red note to my parcel file. Do not record without verification of capacity in person. I wasn't trying to ruin him. I was trying to protect myself. If ruin arrived at his door later, I wanted it to be his own doing as much as possible. A week later, he came over with a softer approach. No notary, no forms, just his hands, open, palms showing. Mom, he said at the threshold, I miss you. That's not what you miss, I said, but I stepped back to let him in. He walked around the kitchen, touching objects as if he were proving that the house belonged to him by the way his hands looked against my things. He stopped at the pear tree visible through the window. Remember when I fell out of that? You were 9, I said. You broke your wrist and told everyone the cast was a trophy. He smiled, truly, for the first time in weeks. I was fearless then. You were loved, I said. It felt similar. Still am, right? He looked at me, searching my face for an easy yes. I love my son, I said. But my son doesn't get to be cruel and call it care. He swallowed. I messed up. I waited. I messed up big, he added. I took money I shouldn't have from the business. I told myself it was a loan. I told myself I'd put it back after the next project. It got away from me. Money doesn't get away, I said. People let go. He wiped his face. I need help. Then ask for help, I said. Not for ownership. He blinked, surprised by the difference. What does help look like? It looks like me calling a debt counselor with you. It looks like you selling the boat before you ask me to sell the house. It looks like you calling the investor and using words like extension and settlement and personal responsibility instead of using words like family and love like they're debit cards with no limit. He stared at me. You always make speeches when you're winning. I make speeches when people try to confuse me, I said. He sat. His shoulders dropped. For a moment, I saw the boy who cried when his goldfish died and tried to hide it by watering the plant too much. I almost reached for his hand, but reaching doesn't always help a drowning person. Sometimes they pull you under. I'll try, he said. Try with action, I said. He left with the debt counselor's number in his phone and no paper signed. I watched 2 weeks pass, like slow weather. He met with the counselor. He sold the boat. He sent a text that read, "It's harder to be good than to be fast." I wrote back, "You were always fast. Try good." Then his investor called me. "Mrs. Hale," he said in a voice that thought it was charming, "we're very worried about Daniel. He's under a lot of pressure. If you could show some flexibility, it would go a long way." Flexibility? I said. Is that Wall Street for surrender? Don't be adversarial, he said. We all want what's best for Daniel. Then stop lending him money, I said. Let him feel the weight of what he owes. Silence. You're not very maternal, are you? I am, I said, which is why I don't let my child use my body as collateral. He didn't call again. The last act began not with a twist I engineered, but with one I couldn't have designed. The police called me at 7 a.m. to say Daniel had been picked up for attempting to pass a forged notarization at the clerk's office. The notary he'd used, the boatman apparently, had stamped a form while Daniel scribbled a shaky version of my name. The clerk recognized my file flag and called for backup. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I wanted to go back to bed and wake up in a simpler year. What happens if I do? I asked. He faces a felony, the officer said. What happens if you don't is up to him. I pressed my thumb and forefinger to my eyes. I want him to face something, I said. I'm done being the only wall. The charges were filed by the state. It wasn't a choice that required me to put my name on a complaint. The machine that had once terrified me began to hum in a way that protected me. I showed up to the arraignment with Mr. Ortiz and Linda, and I didn't look at my son because I had looked at him my entire life. He didn't look back. He stared at a middle distance like there was a better mother in the row behind me whom he could persuade. He pleaded not guilty. Of course he did. But he took the deal later, admission to a diversion program that included restitution, therapy, and a restriction. No contact with my accounts, no attempts to arrange housing for me, no medical advocacy without my signed consent. The judge said, "This is your last easy path," in a tone that sounded like the librarian whose name protects my bank account. I wanted to thank her. After court, he waited by the steps. "You ruined me," he said when I reached him. "No," I said, "I stopped you." "There's a difference." He laughed without humor. "You think you won." "I think I'm safe," I said. "That's not a win. That's a baseline." He opened his mouth to say something cruel and shut it again. He looked at my hands. "I remember these," he said. "When I was sick, you used to hold the back of my neck with your left hand and the thermometer with your right." "I remember too," I said, "which is why I'm still holding the back of your neck just farther away." We didn't hug. We didn't reconcile. Stories told by women my age don't always end with ribbon bows. They end with locks that work and phones that don't ring at midnight. They end with a bank manager who knows your voice and a lawyer who answers in the first 3 rings. They end with a neighbor who stops by at dusk because the porch light is on and she knows you don't like to change bulbs on a ladder anymore. Months passed. I measured time in ordinary ways again. How many pears ripened before the squirrels discovered them? How long it took the orchid to shed and grow a new stem? I changed my will, Not out of anger, but out of accuracy. I set up a small fund for girls in our town who want to study accounting because women with calculators have saved more of us than anyone knows. I left the house to a trust with a clause that no one could sell while I was alive without a written letter from me written in ink I chose. At a desk I chose on a day I circled on the calendar. I sent Daniel a photocopy of that page. No note. He didn't need my words, he needed my boundaries. One afternoon in late autumn, as the leaves did the slow, necessary work of letting go, the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Daniel with his shoulders sloped in a way I didn't recognize. He held nothing in his hands, no forms, no orchid, just fingers. I opened the door and leaned against the frame. "I got a job," he said, as if reporting weather. "Union. No side deals." "That's good," I said, because it was. "I'm tired," he added. "Tired of fast." "Then practice slow," I said. He looked past me into the house. "You still have the pencil marks?" he said. "Of course," I said. "Even the crooked ones." He stood in the chill a beat longer. "I know you don't trust me." "I don't trust you with my house," I said. "Trust is not a blanket. It's a patchwork. You earn squares back, one by one." He nodded like a student storing a lesson. "I'm going to counseling." "Good," I said. "I don't expect you to forgive me." "I don't forgive paper," I said. "I forgive people. But only when they stop behaving like paper." He smiled almost. "I'll come by next week. If that's okay, call first," I said, because that is a square in the quilt. When he left, I sat at the table and made a list. Women my age make lists because we've learned how much can hide in a day. I ticked off what I had done. I had survived a hospital bed and a son's hurry. I had said no to a pen and yes to the long work of telling the truth to anyone who needed to hear it. I had refused the soft abuse of help when it hid harm. I had learned that justice in an old woman's kitchen sounds like a beeping monitor steadying itself and a bank manager's voice saying, "We flagged it," and the click of my own lock at night set by my hand. I washed my cup, I watered the orchid, I checked the small phone in the flower tin, and erased the files one by one, not because I wanted to forget, but because sometimes clearing space is how you keep the room you need. Then I wrote one more note and stuck it to the inside of the cabinet where the tea lives. You taught him to tie his shoes. You taught him to tell the truth. You taught him you will not be the ransom for his mistakes. Justice didn't arrive like a parade. It arrived like a woman unlocking her own door again and again, living in a house that is hers. Do you think I did the right thing? Let me know in the comments. If you liked my story, subscribe to the channel and like it. Thank you for listening to this story.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.